Hello, everyone. Welcome back. As usual, if you can turn on your cameras, I would like to show your faces. So for today, I want to talk about your assignment 1. The goal of your assignments, even though you are doing programming, is all about design. Design. The goal is the simplest solution, something that solves the problem, obviously, compile, run, get the results that the customer expect, but also something that is easy to read, easy to understand for other developers that maybe in the future they are going to modify or extend the software that you are doing. That is my point. Readability, extensibility, and so on is not a programming class. So my focus today, reviewing your solutions or giving you feedback for your assignments, is in that context, the design, the decisions that you take, and how you put your solution in Java. So previously, key ideas that I want you to have in your mind while we review some solutions. Number 1, the first paper, all about your modules being a collection of common tasks, functions. Here we are with the assignment number 1. Assignment number 1, basically the only thing that I asked you was one class, one module, one file. Most of you submit only one file as I request. I have some of you that submit several files. It is fine. Finally, you're applying your object-oriented programming skills. But for this assignment, it can be done one file, one module. Inside, you put your functions. My request was all of them static. Some of you didn't do that, but most of you follow the idea they are static. We're not working yet with objects. We do not need objects to solve the problem that I asked you to solve. So one module, several tasks, each task was one function. We reviewed that before. Next step, I am going to move forward with your assignment 2 by the end of the lecture and the next one. But your assignment 2, as you can expect, we need to apply information hiding. We need to go and see what can we do with the ideas of partners regarding modules that are not functionality only, but data. And I am sure that you have a very good idea which part of the problem that you are solving is going to be this data that need to be in a different module, maybe in a different class. Homework that I am going to ask you to do for the next week, read 2 more papers. I am going to mention that at the end, but the next 2 papers are about moving from this to object-oriented, from the 70s to the 80s. That is going to be part of my homework for you. So 2 more papers to read. The last slide have the references just for you to know. This point 2, and also the papers that you are going to read, are going to be part of your next assignment, your next programming thing. But before moving to the next one, something that I want to ask you is to fix the current one, if you need to fix it, according with my feedback. Assignment 1 and 2 are going to be incremental. You are going to have a grade for assignment 1. Something that I am going to ask you to do for assignment 2 is to fix the things that probably in the previous one was not 100% correct. So fixing things and do more things. Today, I want to talk about the things that you could start fixing. So next week, your work could be used developing the new things, and you already have this weekend or some days to fix things. Fixing. What could be my recommendation for fixing things? Well, let's check. Several things. Number 1, I want to talk about Javadoc. Help me. What is the difference between Javadoc the comments that are part of Javadoc, and the others, the normal, common, trivial comments in a program. What is the difference? Why we make this note about Javadoc? Any idea? They are just comments like the others or not? Okay, very good point. I want to ensure that everyone is in the same page. When you put a comment in your code, either with this format or multiple paragraphs, do you remember that these two are not only Java? C, C++ follow the same thing. The only difference between them is one line, multiple lines. These kind of comments are for you, for your team, for the people that have access to your source code, right? For the people that is going to be reading the source code and for some reason need more information, need to know something that is not clear in the source code itself. So you put those kind of comments for you, for the people in your team, for the people that have access to the source code. The Javadoc you mentioned in the chat. The Javadoc is not for you, is not for the people in your team, is not for the people that is reading the source code. The Javadoc is going to be for the user. The user of what? Think about this idea of your code is an API. Your code is this black box that someone else is going to use. Think about the documentation for the Java API. If you want to use a library in Java, if you want to use vector, map, collections, you were working in your program. And I am sure that suddenly you need a map and you do not remember the methods in map. You go and check the Java API. What do you read? The Javadoc documentation of the class vector, of the Javadoc documentation of the class map. You read these things that even though are in the source code, that comments become a web page, and that comment is the instruction for you, the users. You do not have access to the class vector, to the class map, set, all those things that you use. You do not have access to the source code, but that comment, the Javadoc, is telling you how to use that function, how to use that class as a user. Documentation of the API, that is the goal of the Javadoc. So one question that you ask me is like, Professor, I have this function and the function is very, very clear. I mean, anyone reading the function is going to understand that this function is reading a file because every single line is kind of clear. The function explains itself. Do I need to add Javadoc? And the answer is yes, because the Javadoc is for the user and the user is not going to have access to that very clear, easy to understand source code that you have there. So the Javadoc and your code, yeah, they can be telling exactly the same. Two different populations, the users and the developers. The best software is the software that do not have these comments. The best software is the software that you can read the software and understand what is happening there without comments for the developers. However, the Javadoc is for you to share your functions, your classes, your software with others that are users like you with the classes, vector, and all the collections in the API. So big difference, right? Now, regarding your submissions, Javadoc have particular templates to follow. There is a guidelines about what can you put in the Javadoc and what is kind of the best recommended way, the standard way to follow. I copy some of your lines randomly from diverse projects, and I want to review it with you. Scenario A. What do you think about this scenario? It is good, can be improved. I am talking about the big picture, not exactly about what is there in the letters or in the sentence, just the big pictures. What do you think? Could you do something different? Do you have exactly the same issues? Which issues? Okay, you make the case. Thank you. In the chat, issue number 1, according with the standard, if you review, this thing should not be at the top. The labels, author, version, and others, down. At the top, the description of the class, the description of the method, whatever. You start with a paragraph. Down, you put the labels, including author. Second, you mention indentation. This space there. Do not put that space there. The only thing that you should put is one space, one empty space here between the asterisk and whatever text you put. Do not make that big space. Why? Because remember, the goal for this is make it easy to read for someone that is working with the code. That tab is going to move the paragraph here. And if this is too long, it's going to be cut. Remember, your IDE is showing you 80 characters, something like that. There is no need for all this space empty. Don't do this. Second, these are my 2 important topics. Author down, the space removed. Now we can go to the sentence, and you're talking about that in the chat. I am sure that you can read this and maybe figure out a different way to explain what was the project. A good thing is all of you solve the same problem. So all of you know what is happening here. What is the description? This is the comment probably at the top describing the class, describing the full project, the assignment. I am not sure if this is exactly what the project is doing. Think about it. If I give you this description is explaining the project that you did. Is really all about expressions and parentheses. I could tell you no. There are parentheses, but they are not the main thing. It's not like a functional language. And expressions, be careful, because the person reading this is a developer, is someone working with the source code. Tell me, developers, what is expression? Definition of expression in Solver. That is an example, regular expressions. What is expression? Another example is an arithmetic expression. Another example is a relational expression, a logic expression. What is expression? A, B, C, D, they are examples of expressions? Yes or no? A, B, C, and D, all of them, they are expressions? Yes. Okay, what, can you tell me what they are? I can help you. An expression is, they are arithmetic, yeah, that is the classification. An expression is a combination of what? numbers, variables, and operators. That is an expression. Operators and operands, yes. An expression is a combination of operators with operands. And in particular, in programming, the operands, literals, or variables. So an expression is a combination of operators and values, variables. Do we have operators in the project that you did? Do we have variables? Do we have literals? Not yet. Not yet. Not for the assignment 1. In the assignment 2, I just introduced the idea of the equal and other things, but for the assignment 1, you do not have expressions. So if you give me this description for the project 1, it's not exactly correct. Don't worry, this is not going to affect your grade. My point is, be clear with your comments, because your comments are going to be this documentation for the API. And if I put this in a web page, and that web page is describing your project 1, this is not your project 1. It's not about parentheses. It's not about expressions. Not yet. It's about other things. Something that you should mention here, yes, the if, yes, the while. We do not really have instruction yet. Help me, what is an instruction in software? Instruction. A command. What is a command? Calling a task is an example. Calling a method is an example. Okay, something that the computer do. Thank you. The only thing that I ask you to do in our programs is you have these names like foo, var, something, whatever. You have those names. They are instructions, maybe. They are variables, maybe. We call it the instructions in our method, check instruction. They are not instructions yet. I mean, really, they do not have any meaning about something that is going to happen, but we call it instructions. Our goal is to move to instructions. So if, okay, while, okay, instructions, names, good. Not sure if you need to mention examples, up to you, but the format. Information at the top, authors down, careful with the indentation, and maybe you can ask someone else in your team to read your description. Remember, it's going to go to a web page. Yeah, that was my comment is you have this whatever, and maybe it's going to be an instruction, maybe it's going to be a variable. That is something that is going to happen in the next assignment. Because think about it, right now you have this what? And I can do two things. I can ask you to add parentheses, and then it's going to become calling a method, an instruction. Or I can ask you to do this, and this is not an instruction, it's an expression. The operator, the equal, and what is a variable, not an instruction anymore. We're going to move in that direction maybe, but we cannot say use with what, whatever, foo, var. We cannot be sure that it's an instruction, not yet, but we're going to move in that direction. And I know that I mentioned check instruction as a recommendation for the method that you develop. So if, while, instruction, not yet, but yeah, we can move in that direction. So this part, I think, good. The parentheses with the expressions, I do not agree. Good? Okay. Scenario 1. Second, what do you think about this one? Question in the chat, is okay to write long descriptions? Have you read or have you opened any of the classes in the Java API? Have you read the description of the class vector or graphics or whatever? They are public knowledge. I mean, you can search in Google for any of the classes in the Java API and you can find the class with all the Java comments. Take a look. The size of the comment for the class. So thank you. Yeah. They are not big, huge. Yeah. So it is fine. Yes, it is fine. I will recommend you a paragraph. I will recommend you a couple of sentences. I am not telling you follow the Java API model, but my point is there is no problem about making long comments. Whatever you need. Good? Okay, this example, what do you think? Okay, well, first, regarding the format. The format is good. That is exactly what we described before. The paragraph with the description above, the authors below, with one small problem. Here, we have two authors. So everything is fine here. If you could here, that is good, author and the name. Something that I think I mentioned in the previous lecture, if you have two authors, add another line like this one. Another add author with the other name. Try to avoid the and with the authors. It's author, 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 as many as you want. So you have the description, author 1, author 2, author 3, and whatever. Regarding the text, the description, I think it's a very good start. Lexical analysis, an input with text, a translation involved, and go to the console. If you read, it's like, boom, boom, boom. The path is there. It's a good starting point, but I agree with the people in the chat. Maybe are details that are missing. It's a very good starting. It's like, okay, I get the idea. It's going to be an input with text, translation, output to the console. Lexical analysis would give the reader all the idea of what is going to happen. Lexical analysis, the strings are going to be put into words. And in particular, maybe the information that is missing is the translation. Translation to what? And maybe the details of the input. The input is what? But again, it's just a maybe. The starting is very good. The position of the description is correct. The author, the first one is good. Do not use this conjunction for the second one or the others. Good. Another one. Good. Good. The version. Good. Help me. What is the problem with the scenes? Maybe we need to review what is the goal of this tag. What is the goal? Probably you do not need it because it's the first version, but just be careful. This scenes here is about a version. You are telling me that something is happening, some functionality, some whatever, is since a particular version. So you are using here a system for version that is with numbers. If you want to have the scenes, well, is instead of this is 1.0. So it makes sense. Version with numbers and decimals, version with numbers and decimals. If you want to use the date as your version, okay, but then here you need to tell me that maybe this is the version 01 2019. So it's like match which version is this one. And if you want to reference something that these have been the same since a past version, just follow a similar approach. Unless in the middle of the system you change the format of your versioning things, that could happen. But in this particular case, as you mentioned in the chat, well, this is the first version. So the since is not really needed. I mean, this is a new product. But if this were a second or something, well, your version system is with numbers. Use numbers with your since if that is something that is important for you. Make sense? So other than that, this is the idea. Author, you can use version, since, provide information, fine. The structure, good. Notice that you have this asterisk forming this kind of line, easy to read, one space, go. Translate, input, etc. You can review the paragraphs. Somehow I think makes sense. As the previous one, maybe you want to ask someone in your team, more people, review the details, improve for the future. But so far, your Javadoc should look like something like this. So for everyone, take a look to your Javadoc. And if you have this or something similar, please review. Similar with this, if you have authors with this format, please review and check that your Javadoc corresponds to something more close to this. And maybe take a look to your paragraphs, to your descriptions. And again, they are going to be in a different place, not with your code. You want to be sure that someone that is not looking to the code is going to understand what is happening there. Okay, this is the easy part, the Javadoc, the comments. Let's move forward. Other things, more close to programming. Guidelines. I asked you to review the Java guidelines. I am assuming that you're familiar with the guidelines for a programming language. Among other things, they told you the names, the format for the names to your classes, your methods, your variables. And I am sure that you remember those rules in Java. So these are your submissions. This is what I received. Some of you use packages. Some of you didn't use it. Some of you submit one file. Some of you submit several files. It's fine. What do you think about the names that I have here on the screen? I am going to start with the last one. What do you think about the class? That one. There is any issue regarding the Java guidelines? And if so, what is the issue? Yeah. Name for your classes, uppercase the first letter. It's a minimum thing, but it's the rule. If you are Java programmers, you need to follow the guidelines. Word, uppercase W. Please check your names, not only classes, but also methods, and check that you are following the guidelines. Yep. What about lexical, compiler, input words? Uppercases, check that. What else? What do you think about this one? You can put class at the end. It's not going to take it as a keyword because it's not alone. But recommendation, guys, you do not need to put class to a class. The name of your file is just what that file is doing. A student, professor, compiler, translator, whatever. You don't need to add class. It's not useful. Yeah. So don't do this. Why? Because you make the name of the class longer. And remember that we're trying to make this easy to read, and something that is long, your brain go crazy. It's like, really, I need to read all of these characters? And when you're reading something and that something is not valuable, it's not giving you information, not a good idea. Be careful with that. A class main, easy to read, easy to understand that the main is there. Another main, another main. Input words is a class, and hopefully you agree with me that I am going to put a question mark there. What could be the reason for a class input words? What is the content of input words? I can guess that maybe it's a class token, or maybe it's a class word. The input thing is not needed. Word could be clear. Token could be clear. Input word make your brain to think like, if there is a class input words, there is another class output words, or something like that. Question. Careful with your packages. If you create a package EO, just remember that there is a package EO with Java, so just be careful with what you are doing there. I am going to talk more about this later, but you will notice that in some projects, someone is using sets. I also notice not as a global, but as a local variable. You are using sets, you are using maps. If I remember correctly, they are hash in some place. What do you think about this for the project that you solve? Do we need sets? Do we need maps? Do we need hash? What would you think if you are interviewing a developer and that developer use set, maps, and hash for the particular assignment? I agree with that. There are two things, guys. Yeah. Let me tell you this. Yeah. Number one, what do we need? And if you think about it, it's like, well, we are creating information, we're creating tokens. But we create a token, and then another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one is linear. And then the only thing that we do with them is a traversal, also linear. I mean, you do not need to go back or to search for something, anything. Is just create them, add them in a linear data structure, and then you are just going to do a traversal that is going to be linear. If the data is created in a line and the data is accessed only in a line, what do you think is the best solution in terms of a data structure? A data structure that is linear. And then you have, yeah, array, or an array, static, or a vector or a list. You know, they are basically the same idea. You have only one element at the beginning, or you create several and then duplicate, performance things. But those are your options, is the vector, the list, the array. Imagine that you are in a programming interview. I know that you want to show your interviewer that you are proficient with this top data structures, map, set, hash. I want to show that I know them. You're going to have the opportunity, but with the correct question. If this is the first assignment, and this is kind of the first question in your interview, the first thing that I want to know is that you can identify your tools and which is the better tool. Do not go directly to the most powerful tool, because it's like, really? I mean, you're going to be programming every single thing with set, hash, and so on. I mean, your interviews, if you are moving with the software, several questions, at least 2 or 5, are going to be things that you can solve with an array, a trivial, simple array. But the goal of the interview is for you to show me that you can think in a computational way, that maybe you can apply recursion or you can apply the correct combination of loops or whatever, but in something that is as simple as use an array, not a vector, not a list, it's use an array and work with that. Show me that with that limited set of tools, you can do something. And if you start with a set, a map, or something complex, probably your interviewer is going to tell you, well, can you remove that and just put an array, and what will you do? What happened? Move forward with the array. What can you do with the array? Use a parenthesis. So my comment for the assignment, you can solve the assignment with a linear data structure, an array, a list. You do not need this, not yet. You're going to have the opportunity to use them. So when I read this, it's like another question mark here. Something is not good for feedback of it. Now, this is what I have. A package path also catch my attention. Path. I know that I need a path for a file, but having a package with that name is not telling me a lot. It's kind of why I need a package, a collection of classes related with a path. Easy to read, not only inside, outside. This is my starting point for reading your code, the name of your classes, and maybe the name of your packages. Check your names, the names that you are using, the names that you are going to use. Be sure that they are correct. Good? Any questions so far? Great. Coding. Guidelines, comment, easy things. Your programs. Let's see. This is one solution, scenario A, a full class. The solution of one of you. I don't care about the source code. This is how the class looks like. What do you think? You are the instructor. You are going to provide feedback. What kind of feedback could you provide looking at this? Line 20, something that you could recommend in the line 20. Could you agree with me that the recommendation here could be maybe a more descriptive name for the class? I mean, is really parentheses the best name to summarize the project, the assignment? It's a subjective thing. My position is like some of you there in the chat. I have one yes, but I have several no's. So I could add my no to the chat. Yeah, there are parentheses involved, but I think there are other things that could better describe the assignment. I don't know if lexical analysis, I don't know if translator, I don't know if assignment 1 used. I am not asking for a particular name. I didn't do that. Use checking your creativity. I do not think that parentheses is the best name. There is a reason, because the classes in the Java API have this name: vector, array, list, queue, and so on. it suggests what you are going to find inside. And if you have a class called parentheses, I don't know, maybe you are expecting to have inside methods that do something with parentheses, all of them, or are related somehow with parentheses, drawing parentheses, or counting parentheses, I don't know. I could recommend a change for the name. What do you think about the lines 22 to 25? Too many data structures, I agree. Remember, I am not reviewing your source code. I am really reviewing your design. You can think that I am showing you a class diagram, one box, and the only thing that I have are the variables and the method, but I am showing you a screenshot of the code instead of creating the diagram. It is a box. You know the assignment. And knowing the assignment, you know the solution, you solve the problem. If I review a code and I have these 4 variables global, in particular the 3 first, in which I have maps and queues. The first thought is, I really need this complexity. I really need these data structures to solve the problem. You solve the problem. I am assuming that this program worked. I haven't compiled, I haven't run it. Probably, hopefully it worked. But it's a complex solution for an easy problem. Tell me, data structures, which is the line, the data structure or data structures that I could expect to have here in any of your projects? What is the simple solution for the problem that you solve? Do I need what? Agree. Let's see. We can have a list or we can have an array. In particular, what you need is a table. And in that table, the only thing that you need to store in each row is the token, the word, and the category. That is what you need. You need a data structure, a tabular data structure, and you need the item that you are reading, foo, var, whatever, parentheses, and the category. It's a delimiter, it's a name, it's a keyword. You need that. A data structure for this, 2 options. You can have a p-dimensional array with the issue of the size, or you can have maybe a vector of objects. You can put these 2 guys in an object, like some of you did the object token, and create an array of those objects. I didn't ask you for that because we're working with this model of structural programming. So if you didn't create an object, because I didn't ask for that, worst case scenario, you need a vector 1 and you need a vector 2. And they can be vectors of strings. 2 vectors, but the element 1 in one vector is the element 1 in the other. So if I have a word in the position 1, the element 1 in this other vector is the type for that one. The index is the connection between the 2. Worst case scenario, 2 vectors of strings. Can you agree with me that with that variable, we solve the problem? That is the only variables that we need global. How do I know that 2 vectors are the only variables that we need globals? Why I think that, for instance, this string here do not need to be global? When do you put a variable global? I know that when you did programming, in a programming class, they teach you how to use globals and locals, and you are free to put whatever you need. In a programming class, they teach you that if two methods need the same variable, you put the variable global. Always, always, always. If you can pass a parameter or receive a return, if you can save the space for the global, do not use the global. Not only for the space. I don't care about the memory. The memory is the less problem. When you put a global variable like this for, you are asking for me, for the reader, to remember that variable, to think that that variables are important and are going to be there maybe in all the methods or in several methods. Readability. The variables at the top is something that the reader need to remember. Save the reader for that. What I need to remember here for this problem, these two vectors. I need to remember them because they are part of the lexical analysis and also part of the translation. They are in several different methods. All the methods are using these tokens. Full sense that they are global. Any other thing, like whatever are you doing here with this answer, I am sure that you can find a way to make that one a parameter, or how many methods are using this, connect them, share this variable among them. Now, a second case, you can tell me, well, you know what? It is global because we are storing the answers there. That is good for maybe the next assignments. For this one, remember, what the customer asks is for you to print the answers. And in order to print the answers, you do not need to store them and print it later. You can print, like we did, use on the site. And if you want to have control of the printing, you can define your own method print, and you can call that method, and inside of that method, you can do whatever validation or formatting you want. You do not need to store the output. That was not yet a requirement. So again, requirements, your solution, the reader is looking for your solution to be the simple solution for the problem that was described. No more, nor less. Goodbye to that one. Check these two. Anyway, let's see. What else? You know what? Very good idea. Some of you did this. Keywords. We are going to have the keywords if, while, and instead of having in the source code if and while, it's a very good idea to define these constants. That is good programming technique. Why? Because later we're going to add more. And instead of having if, whiles, uppercase, lowercase in the program, let's define constants. This, check. Very good thing. Some of you did this. What do you think about the methods? Can you figure out what these methods are doing? Is something that makes sense with your solution or the problem? Yes, no, maybe. The names of the methods. Well, I removed the Javadoc, so in order to make it fit the slide. So I let the Javadoc in the different place. So here I removed that. Here, I want you to notice. Reading the files, printing Word, verifying the lines. This is the lexical parts. Even without reading the source code, I am sure that you can map this like task, task, task. I understand the problem. Check the method, check the while, check the if. These are the other tasks. The task for the translation or the syntactic analysis. Good. Those are easy. Something that I would mention here. what do you think about this method? What do you think about something removing white spaces? Is something that is part of the requirements? Is something that you think makes sense? You solve the problem? What do you think? My comment there, question marks. For me as a reviewer, looking this is like, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. Remove what spaces I have two issues. Again, I am not telling you it's wrong because I haven't reviewed the full source code. What I am telling you is for any reader, that line is going to be a red light. Red light means I need to review more. I need to review more. Why? Two things. Number one, I agree with the chat. Looks like maybe it's part of another method. Number one. But the most important thing, I am concerned about removing, because you are reading an input. You do not need to remove anything. Removing sounds like you get the info and then you remove. Sounds like a second step. I do not know if this is the case, but we are reading, and as you mentioned, when we are reading, we can ignore those spaces, and when we store, the things that we store do not have those spaces. There is no need for remove because really we ignore them in real time. That could be the best process. I mean, think about this. I am in the classroom and the only people that should be in the classroom are the students of this class. I have two options. I can be in the door and check your ID at the door, so only the students that should be there enter. Or the second option is I allow everyone to go in, and inside of the classroom, I start reviewing the IDs. The first option is better than the second one. It's just one step. In the second one, people go in, people should go out. Is a double thing to do. Here, if we allow reading everything and then remove, it's another loop. Just thinking about performance. But again, I am just guessing things. And my guessing comes from the name of the method. The method itself there. That is like, I am not sure that the task of removing should be here. Again, my evaluation is about design. The last one, some of you did this. Some of you figured out that all these method check have similar sentence, like checking open parentheses, closing parentheses, open curly bracket. So some of you put that in a different method, like this one. That worked for this first assignment. Sorry, you're going to need to remove that and put back in the original place for the next assignment, because you're going to need to modify new things that are not going to be like the same for everything. The methods are going to have parameters inside. The if and the while are going to have conditions, and the conditions are going to become another method, check condition, you can imagine, and the other is going to become check parameter. So this method, good, is going to become another check something. Moreover, two methods instead of one, but it's something that you did, some of you did. Okay, scenario one. Good things, another to improve. Another scenario, scenario B. And again, a full solution. What do you think, again, about the lines that I put inside of boxes? I have gray one and blue ones, ideas. Let's start with the blue ones. What do you think about what is happening here? The comment about the data structure, apply the one that we reviewed before. It's like two complex data structures, set, you do not need sets, but we already mentioned that. What about these static keywords for the data structures? And what about this having a constructor and in the line 34, create an object? You only have one class, remember? Your program, your full program is one class. Design. If you're using a static, what is the reason for using a static? The reason because I asked you to do static methods, and the reason because I asked you to follow with the static variables. No need for objects. Let me be clear. If you're going to use a static with the methods and you're going to use a static with the variables, there is no need for a constructor. There is no need for creating an object. Now, if you want to create objects, we're going to do that in the next assignment, moving back to the object-oriented paradigm. If you're going to create the objects for this scenario, there is no need for the static. I mean, one option or the other. You work with objects, attributes. You're going to use a static because you do not want to create objects. Do not create objects. Because right now I have both. I have an object lexer, but that have static variables. There is a reason for having static variables with objects. But again, in this particular problem, for this particular scenario, you are overcomplicating the solution. It's like, what is the reason for this particular problem to have an object of the class and also have static variables? It's like, for the reader, it's like a very good reason should be, and I am not understanding that reason. And the reader get crazy about it. There is no reason. We are just overcomplicating things. Remember, not sure if you're familiar with this, software developing, keep it simple. KISS, a principle for programming. Keep your software, your source code, simple, easy to read. If you give me objects and static, both, for this particular problem, again, this particular concept, you are not keeping things simple. Because you can just choose one, objects, no static, or static, no objects, for this particular solution. We're going to move forward and we're going to talk about when to use a static and for what, don't worry. But again, this particular problem, one option or the other. And in particular, the option that I asked for is with the static because we are working in this kind of structural programming. We haven't read about object-oriented yet. So in this scenario, I will remove the constructor, I will remove the object. Well, be careful. If you're going to use a constructor, making the constructor private, we are moving to this idea that no one can create the object, only this class. In this particular assignment, it's not going to be any different because the only object that you're creating is in the main. But the goal of a constructor, unless you're creating a singleton, the goal of the constructor is to be public, again, unless particular cases. So 99% of the time you want your constructor to be public. You want others to create objects from the class. In this particular problem, for this particular assignment, we do not have other classes. And we do not have yet a class that we can share with others. We do not have yet this component that we can share. For this particular assignment, my recommendation is you do not need objects, not yet. And therefore, you do not need a constructor, not yet. Moreover, you can be thinking, well, but what happened with the instructions that we have inside of the constructor, right? I mean, there is a constructor because there are some instructions that you want always to be executed. And that is my next question. What do you think about the lines 22 to 26 and 27 to 29? Delimiters, okay, you want to store all your delimiters in some kind of data structure. I agree. Instead of searching for parentheses, commas, and so on, you want to do a loop and search and compare with the other data structure. I agree with that. But remember, the delimiters are not going to change. Your delimiters are going to be always the same. It's going to be kind of a static final variable. And the same with the keywords, right? So if you want to do that, good idea. The only thing is the best data structure to use is a static data structure. I mean, what is the reason for having this list or vector or whatever and adding things if the data structure is not going to change? You're not going to remove anything. You're not going to add anything. You are using something dynamic. And remember, the goal of something dynamic is to increase the size. Doesn't matter real time. You are not going to do that. What you really need is an array. Moreover, you can initialize the array in one line with this particular format. You can change line 22 to 29, 7 lines in 2. And you can remove dynamic memory for static, less memory. Because in the array, the only memory that you're going to use is the memory of the elements. With the dynamic data structure, you have the memory for the element and the memory for the pointer, right? The computer have a lot of memory. My problem is not the memory. My problem is readability. Read 2 lines, 2 arrays in which I can easily identify the elements versus reading this dynamic data structure in which you add information. And again, for the reader is, okay, at the beginning we add this information. What else I am going to add later? For the reader is, this is going to change. I am going to remove and add more. It's not the case. Good. And if you do this, this can move to the top because they can be attributes, static, final, and even they can be public. We're going to make it public later because other classes are going to need it. Your code is smaller. Another scenario. What do you think about this one? It's the same one that before with the class, so remove that one. What do you think about the other lines? Two comments on my side. The use of constants. Good idea, right? Yeah. Some of them, the idea is good. The implementation can be better. I am going to talk about it. But in this scenario, what I want to highlight is the idea is good. We need to review the implementation because there are a lot of strings. We have other solutions, but the idea of defining the constant is a good one. I put a check there. Now, I have a main, read, split, split. I know what is going to happen there. Very good naming is and something. I know what is going to happen there. You can figure out. And then I have these 2 methods at the end. That's it. And maybe you, in the same way that I was, is like, and where are the methods? Check if, check while, and check instruction and translate. It's like everything at the top is the lexical, and then I have only 2 methods. I need to review more, right? It's not like the exact solution that you have in others. Well, I was curious about it, so I may click here to check this translate, because there is no other point for the translation process. So click there, and I have this. Comments. Good, bad, concerns, bad, why? Okay, all of that comments. Thank you for helping me. Yes. You know what? The main concern that I have is, oh, I have two concerns. Concern number one is not following what we defined before. Therefore, it's not going to be able to adapt to the next versions. Okay, but this is for the future. In the present, the main concern is, can you tell me what is the cyclomatic complexity of this method? Very close to 10, right? Number of conditions plus one. So, okay. What happened with that? According with the number, is hard to, is complex to read, complex to understand. Compare this maybe with the solution that you implement, in which you have the method, check instruction, check method, check if, check while. I know we have more methods. It's like a document. You have more paragraphs. But each of the paragraph is very easy. A couple of ifs, complexity below 5 maybe, hopefully below 4. If you put everything in one method, one single method, this thing, if I give you this method and I ask you to do something to improve this, modify this, you are going to need more time to understand what is happening here than to understand the other solution. I am concerned about, again, easy to read. Moreover, guys, if I want to move forward and implement a compiler, if I want to move forward and ask you to compile a method or an if or a while to assembly language, right now, you can go to your method, check while, check if, check method, and something is going to happen there. Somehow in those methods, you're going to put the instructions for the translation process to assembly language. You do not know what yet, or where, or how, but you know that inside of that method, something should happen. And if I start talking about, you know what, in order to create assembly language for the method or for the if or whatever, you know that whatever I describe, I am talking about something that it should be inside of that method. You split your program in boxes, and each box is responsible of something. The concern with this, what if I tell you how to translate the if or the while or the method? Everything that I describe is something to add here. And believe me, it's going to become complex. Spaghetti code, too complex, too big. Not exactly a good idea. Moreover, my next concern is recursion, because the main reason because we implement these different methods is because, for instance, we can have ifs inside of ifs or whiles inside of whiles. And with the other implementation, we have this method calling itself or method calling another method. You are aware of the solution. What is happening here regarding handling that? Something inside of something. The stack, correct? All this this. It's a global variable and it's a stack. Yeah, recursive solution or stacks, both solve the same problem. Remember, trees, you can do the traversal with recursion, you can do the traversal with the stack. Those are the two solutions that we have. Which one is better? In which cases? Recursion or using loops with a stack? You know that the structures, you review recursive solution for traversals, and I am sure that you review also the other options, the sequential option with stacks. Which one is better? When? Okay, elegant. Elegant is a nice word to say easy to read. Easy to read, elegant, clear, small, recursion. Do you remember how to implement a traversal, pre-order, post-order, in order of a tree? And I am sure that the first thing that comes to your mind is the recursive solution, because the recursive solution is 3 lines. Moreover, you remember that they are basically the same, just you move the position of the print. Easy to remember because it's easy to read, because it's elegant, short, small, recursive. The recursive solution in terms of design are better than the others. The iterative solution, the ones that are not recursive, are usually hard to read. They are longer. They have any advantage? Or the recursive one have any disadvantage? Yeah, thank you. Resources. Not only memory, but also CPU. The recursive solutions are very expensive in terms of resources. Stack Overflow happen. If you're going to calculate the factorial of a number, the recursive solution is more elegant, but the other one is going to calculate more numbers. It's going to be able to do more because it uses less memory. The recursive solution is going to go the Stack Overflow very quickly. And I am talking about something as simple as the factorial. In any other solution is similar. You need to consider that part. Good news for a compiler. Recursive solution. It's going to be a recursive call, worst case scenario, every time that you put something inside of something. Every time that you put an if inside of an if, it's a recursive call. How many if are you going to put inside of another? How big is going to be this recursive stack? Worst case scenario, if you follow the rules, how many conditions could we have in a method? The recommendation is 10. Well, maybe you move to 20, 50. Worst case scenario, you put all of them inside of the others. So you have 49 recursive calls, 99 recursive calls, 9 recursive calls. It's good to go, no problem. The computer is going to handle. Nothing is going to happen. You're going to be able to compile any program. And the recursive solution is going to be easy to read, so go for that one. What about the timing, the performance? I am sure that you don't care if your compiler uses 0.5 seconds or 0.7 seconds in compiling your program. The graphical user interface is going to use more time to show you things. So the recursive solution should be better for these cases. Moreover, do you remember that we have this add closing brackets here? Oops. Yeah, because here, this solution is adding to the stack, and another method is checking that the stack is empty at the end. So you insert things in the stack, and then in order to know that there was no errors, you take out things from the stack. not exactly the best performance, not exactly the solution that I recommend. Good? Question so far, scenario C. One last thing to finish. What do you think about this try cache, cache, and the throw there? A term in coding, do not repeat yourselves. Do I really need this try cache if it's like, if you're going to do the try catch inside, well, or if you're going to do this, well, again, take a decision, follow your decision, but do not give me two, because then you are repeating yourselves. So things that you can review in your code, I need to show you more, but I'm going to stop here. Homework. For your homework, two things. Read these two papers. They are on Canvas. In particular, this one, Ken Beck, the guy that created the unit, and you can review your software. You can review your assignment one, apply the things that I mentioned before. You're going to have to do a second version, not yet. So nothing to submit, just review your assignment and start working. We're going to talk about assignment 2 next week. Good? Okay, guys, see you next lecture. Thank you.